Hello and good evening, CSI258 Section 847 students for the second 8-week term of the spring 2015 semester at Anne Arundel Community College. This evening's PacketTracer tutorial is a fantastic activity on troubleshooting point-to-point protocol, or PPP, authentication. And we're going to be doing PacketTracer activity 3.4.1.4. And this topology is almost identical to the topology that we had in PacketTracer, I believe it was 3.2.2.7. So let's go ahead and jump right in here. So we've got the routers at our company were configured by an inexperienced network engineer. We're going to have to do some diagnosis and try to determine where the problems may lie. So diagnose and repair the physical layer. So diagnose and repair cabling. So let's examine the addressing table to determine the location of the connections. Right, so you can see we've got 3 routers, and then we're also going out to the ISP. However, the connection out to the ISP, which was in the previous PacketTracer activity, was a serial link. Here we've got an Ethernet, Ethernet gig connection. All right, so let's verify the cables are connected as specified. So we're going to go ahead and pull router 1 up here. Let's give ourselves some more real estate here with router 1. And then we're also going to pull up router 2. And then finally, excuse me, we're going to pull up router 3. All right. So let's go ahead and we're going to take a look at router 3 here. So it says that the password is Cisco and the enable password is class. So let's go ahead and on router 3, let's just do a quick show run. You can see we've got our enable password is set. We've got the enable secret. Now we have a username R1 with a password of Cisco. And so this may be used for our CHAP authentication, because that's one thing we need to make sure of, is that all of the links are using CHAP and they're also using PPP. So here we go. So if we take a look at the first 2 serial interfaces, we can see right off the bat that both interfaces are shut down. So let's go ahead and take care of that. Let's say conft or configure terminal to get into global config mode, and then we're going to go into interface serial 0/0/0. And we're just simply going to say no shut. And then I'm going to transition into interface serial 0/0/1, and we're going to say the same thing. No shut. Now the interfaces, the links may change to down. However, we're going to have these links not administratively down in order to help troubleshoot. So according to the requirements, everything needs to be using PPP and CHAP authentication. So let's take care of serial 001 first. Or I'm sorry, serial 000, by saying encapsulation PPP, and then it's going to be PPP authentication CHAP. So now when I do a do show run, let's see what that interface looks like. So there's serial 000. We've got the encap PPP. We have the PPP authentication CHAP, and this should be the DCE side of our connection because the clock rate is here. And as you can see, we do have the clock right here. So let's confirm on router 1 that we should be 172.16.0.10 for serial 000. And here it shows that the IP should be 172.16.0.1 because over on router 2 it's going to be 0.2. So it looks like our IP is wrong as well. So let's fix that by saying IP address 172.16. And I apologize, I'm on router 3. I need to get my bearings here. I thought I started on router 1. So we're here actually. So serial 000 on router 3. So the IP is correct. And it is still the DCE side of the link. So serial 001 on router 3 should have the IP address 172.16.06, and it does not. So let's jump on to serial 001. And say IP address 172.16.0.6. And whoops, let's make sure we get our subnet mask in here. And this is a /30. So it'll be a 255.255.252. And so let's go ahead and do another show run here, see where we're at right now. So the encapsulation is set, and the serial 001 side appears to be the DTE side. So let's go ahead and do a do show interface serial 001, and it should be the DTE side. And I apologize, I'm going to be doing a do show controllers serial 001, and we are the DTE side, and the clocks have been detected. So if I do a do show IP interface brief, you can see that both links are in the down and down state, right? But that's okay because it's probably related to some things we've got going on in these other interfaces. So let's jump to router 1. So on router 1, we're going to say Cisco, and the enable password is class. And we're just simply going to do a show run here to, again, get our bearings on the serial interfaces. So as you can see, serial 000 is shut down, 001 is also shut down, and let's make sure 000, we've got the clock rate here, so that's a good thing because that's the DCE side. Serial 001, we have the clock rate as well, and is that a good thing or not? It appears that it should be, the clock rate should be over here on router 3's serial 000 interface. So let's go ahead and do a do show controllers on serial 000 on router 3, and it is the DCE side of the cable. However, router 1 on the serial the serial 001 side, if I were to say so controllers serial 001, you can see that we have the DTE side here, and it says clocks detected, but we also have the clock rate command. All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to take these on one at a time here. Let's first go ahead and address the issues with serial 000. So I'm going to type in config T to get into global config mode, and then go to interface serial 000. First thing we're going to do is say no shut to bring the interface up. We're going to change our encapsulation from HDLC to PPP, and then we're going to say PPP authentication, CHAP. Now, this should be the DCE side on serial 000. So if I say do show run, excuse me, everything looks good on this side of the link. Let's confirm the IP address for router 1, serial 000, and the IP address is correct. However, the subnet mask is a .248, and we should have a 252, so let's take care of that right now. So IP address 172.16.0.1, and a /30 would be a 252. So we'll go ahead and we'll update the IP address there. All right, now let's take a look at int serial 001. So it's a .9, and that's correct. It's a 252, that's correct. The in cap is correct. However, the authentication has been set to CHAP. I'm sorry, to PAP, and we want to go ahead and set that to CHAP. So PPP authentication, CHAP. And we have a clock right there. Let's see if we're allowed to remove this here, because this is the DTE side of the connection. Now it says this command applies only to DCE interfaces, which is correct, because we're trying to pull that command off of there because it's a DTE connection. So we're going to go ahead and leave that there for now and see what happens when we come back. So I'll say no shut, and we're going to bring that interface up. And as you can see here, we've got some success between router 1 and router 3. And if I were to do a do show IP interface brief, you can see that we are in a state, and this is very indicative of a CHAP authentication problem, where you have the layer 1 status, the physical layer is up. However, when we take a look at the protocol layer 2 status, the status shows as down, because right now we probably have an issue with our CHAP authentication. So if I were to say do show run, we should have an entry in here for username R2, but we also need one for username R3. 3. So let me go ahead and let's add the response that we would give when challenged by router 3. So I would say username R3, password Cisco. And so we'll go ahead and we'll add that in. And now let's take, and there you can see the line protocol is now up. So do show IP interface brief. Now we're in an up and up state. And that is that status that we saw earlier, the up down, which was a little higher up here, that is, especially when you're using PPP, this is highly indicative of a CHAP authentication error. So the link control protocol, which handles the CHAP authentication process, it can't complete. And therefore, we're good at layer 1. However, the link control protocol, which runs at layer 2, is unable to get us to an open state or an up state here in the protocol output. All right, and we even have our OSPF adjacency that has now come up. If I looked at router 3, what would we expect to see? If I said do show run, we would expect to see a username for both R1 and R2. However, and you can see this is probably going to be a problem. We'll let this play out. We know that this is probably going to be an issue, but let's let it play out. So I'm going to go ahead and come over here to router 1, and you can see that we are in an up-down state with router 2. So again, or I'm sorry, I thought it said up-down. It just says down-down. So let's go ahead, and we haven't looked at router 2 yet. Let's see what router 2 has going on here. So Cisco, and then enable to get into the privilege exec, and the password is class. And I'm just going to say show run, and we're going to take a look at what we have here. So as you can see, I've got a username for R11 and R3. And one password is Cisco, the other one is class, and we're using right now, if I look at R1 again and say do show run, I think we're going to standardize on simply using Cisco. So the first thing that we need to do is go into global config mode, and I'm basically going to say no username R11 password Cisco because there is no R11. And I think it looks like just a typo there where somebody wanted to say username R1 password Cisco, and this is what router 2 is going to reply with when challenged by router 1. So we'll say username R1 password Cisco, and then we're also going to say no username R3 password class, and I'm going to say username R3 password Cisco. So now we've got the username sorted out, but my guess is that those two interfaces on router 2, serial 000 and 001, may be in the state that the other interfaces were in, which is shut down. So let's take a look. So we look good there with our usernames, right? We have a response for R1, we've got a response for R3, and let's come down here and take a look. So as you can see, both interfaces are shut down. So we'll look at serial 000 first. It's 172.16.02. And that's correct, and it is a /30. Our NCAP PPP looks good. The PPP authentication is CHAP. However, we also have a clock rate command here, and it doesn't appear that this is supposed to be the DCE side. So here's what we're going to say. I'm going to go into interface serial 000, and we are simply going to say no shut, because we're going to go ahead and we're going to bring that interface up. And as you can see, we've got the green link light there. If I type do show IP interface brief, 000 is in an up state. And then the OSPF adjacency came up. So now let's go ahead and do another do show run here. And we're going to take a look at serial 001, which has an IP of 172.0.16.5. And that's correct. And the subnet mask is correct. However, it's shut down. So let's get in there, and there's no encap set. So we want to go ahead and say encap for encapsulation PPP. We want to say PPP authentication CHAP, and then we're also going to say no shut. Excuse me. All right, so now that interface has come up. So if I do a do show IP interface brief, my guess is we're going to be in an up-down state, right? And remember, when you see this up-down, the first thing that you should be thinking is there's some sort of authentication problem here, right? We've got a CHAP authentication problem of some kind. So let's come over to router 3, and I'll say do show run, and let's see which usernames we have. And this is the one we're coming back to, where we looked at this earlier and we recognized right away, hey, if I'm doing CHAP authentication to router 1 and router 2, I need to have a username password response ready to go for both router 1 and router 2. So let's get this in here. So we're just simply going to say username R2, password Cisco. And now that should facilitate the serial 001 link to come up. Do show IP interface brief. We still show up down. Let's see, is there something on serial 001 that we failed to do? So we've got the IP address is correct. The subnet mask is correct. Aha. So what's different here? You guessed it, our authentication. So let's get into interface serial 001, where we're going to simply say PPP authentication CHAP. And that's going to solve our authentication woes. And there we go. So you can see that the serial 001 has changed its state to up. If I do a do show IP interface brief, and then we've got our adjacency loading. So everything looks good. Let me check to see, diagnose and repair any inactive interfaces. Okay, so, oops, sorry about that. So examine the configuration of each router to verify that the clock rate has been set on the appropriate interfaces. Set the clock rate of any serial interface that requires it. Examine the encapsulation. We did that. We examined the password and verify the IP addressing. So there were some IP addressing issues. However, we're at 74 out of 100. Let me see here. I'm going to check results. Let's see if it's expecting us to change cables out. So the gig link out to the internet. Oh, okay. So we're good. It's just expecting us to do the configuration work. We were focused on the serial links. However, as you can see here, we've got some configuration work to do on those gig links, which I completely overlooked. So let's go ahead and say do show IP interface brief, and the gig, we're on router 3 here, so gig 01 is administratively down. So let's say a do show run. Let's check and see what gig 01's got configured. So it's shut down. It's 10.0.0.129, and that's correct. And the subnet mask is wrong. So we have a /24 subnet mask, and it should actually be a /25. So let's get into interface gigabit Ethernet 0/1. We're going to say IP address, and we're going to do 10.0.0.129. However, it should be 255.255.255.128, and then we're going to say no shut. So we're going to change the IP address, and then we're also going to bring that interface up. And now Spanning Tree is going to go ahead and do its thing, and while that's in action, let me come over here to router 1, where we're going to do the same thing. Do show IP interface brief, and we're looking at gig 0. Aha. So on router 1, we should be using gig 01, but which interface is configured? Gig 00. So here's what we're going to do. It's already administratively down, so let's see if it'll allow me to do this. So we're going to say interface gigabit Ethernet 0/1. I'm going to say no shut, and that is the correct interface. You can see the light just went green. So what they've done is they've configured the interface or the IP on the wrong interface. So I'm going to say IP address 10.0.0.1 in the hopes that they're going to allow me to do this and not say that it's overlapping in some form or fashion. And nope, that worked great. All right, so we've got the IP address in there for router 1 and router 3's LAN segments. Let's go ahead and take a look here at router 2. And I'm going to say do show IP interface brief. We did that. I'm going to do it again real quick here. So it shows it's in an up state. Let's take a look at gig, and this is router 2, gig 01. So gig 01 has no IP address information configured. So let's get in there. Gigabit Ethernet 0/1. And I'm going to say IP address, and this should be 172.16. Oh, I'm sorry, 209. So 209.165.200.161, and this is a /26, so 255.255.224, right? So we're borrowing, I'm sorry, /27, because we're borrowing 3 host bits, right? So the 128, the 64, and the 32 bring us to 224. So it's a /27, and we'll throw the IP address on there, and then we'll say end. And now let's go ahead and let's check that end-to-end connectivity. So we've got PC3 here. So let's see, can I ping out to the web server? So let's say ping 209.165.200.2. And I'm sure it's going to have to ARP out here for the default gateway. And then hopefully it's going to make its way out to that web server. It looks like there we go. Okay, it took a little bit there for it to get out there. All right, so then it got out there. So PC1, we should be good to go as well. So let's check PC1 here. And we're just going to say ping 209.165.200.2. And hopefully we don't have 4 ping packets fail on us. There we go, just 1. All right. So we've got end-to-end connectivity. So again, just to recap, one of the things that you should first look for when you do a do show IP interface brief and you see that the physical layer is down or up and the line protocol is down, if we're doing anything with CHAP authentication or PPP and authentication, one of the first things that you should check should immediately be the username password configurations on the routers, because that's typically an indication that something is wrong at layer 2. Okay, so that concludes PacketTracer Activity 3.4.1.4, and I hope this has cleared up any confusion that you might have had on this PacketTracer activity and maybe given you a little assist in terms of the troubleshooting. All right, thanks for watching, and I will see you on Saturday.